Hi there, YouTubers. I've been away for a while, but I've done a little bit of record buying. This is the first Animals album, Eric Burdon and the Animals, The House of the Rising Sun. In the United States, it was released on MGM Records. This is a stereo copy. In Canada, when it was released on Capitol Records instead of MGM. Later on, maybe 6 months or a year after the initial Capitol release, which this is, it was released like the American copy on MGM, the one that I just showed you. The back cover is exactly the same, but the front cover is different. Now, most of the British invasion bands in Canada were actually released on the Capitol, typical Capitol label like the Beatles. Also the Beach Boys, of course, were on the Capitol Rainbow label. This one is in mint condition, this Animals album. It's very nice. Persuasive Percussion Volume 3. It's one of those Enoch Light productions. The Command label. It's in stereo, featuring Doc Severinsen on horn. Nice geometric cover. It's got the description of all the songs inside. Mash McCann. Now, Mash McCann were a Canadian band from Montreal around 1970. They had one big hit in Canada as years go by, and Days When We Were Free was a minor hit. It featured Pierre Senecal, who did the arrangements, wrote most of the songs, and the drummer here is Jerry Mercer, and he's later joined April Wine, and I think he's still drumming for April Wine, and that's almost 40 years later. This one is called The Secret Policeman's Third Ball. I have the first two. I didn't realize that there was a third one until I saw this, and I think it was a charity recording for Amnesty International. Kate Bush, Duran Duran, Lou Reed, Jackson Browne. Very 80s. Richard Thompson. This album of Richard Thompson's is from 1983. Now, Richard has a cult following, I suppose. He was a member of the original member, or one of the original members of Fairport Convention back in the late 60s. British folk, kind of pop folk. He's had many solo recordings since the 70s. This is Brian Auger and the Trinity. I think it's the first album that they released in 1969 without Julie Driscoll on vocals. It was strictly instrumental. Brian Auger played Hammond organ, keyboards. Howard Roberts, great jazz guitar player from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and then he went into teaching. He used to write articles for Guitar Player magazine. And this album is on the Concord label. It's from the 1970s. He did a lot of studio work in the 1960s, played on lots of Beach Boys records and many other great hits that came out of Los Angeles in the 1960s. Joe Pass, Virtuoso 3. Joe Pass is considered to be perhaps the greatest jazz guitar player of the 60s and 70s. And he was signed to the Pablo label in the 1970s and released a series of albums called Virtuoso. This is the third. This is another jazz guitar album. Charlie Byrd, Barney Kessel, and Herb Ellis on the Concord Jazz label. This is an interesting one that I picked up that I'd never seen before. It's called 20 Years of Jethro Tull, and it came out 1988. Double album. There's one of Pete Frame's family trees there of Jethro Tull over on the side. And these are the cuts on this were taken from a 5-album set of Jethro Tull tracks. We have here the first Buffalo Springfield album from 1967 that features that big hit song, For What It's Worth. This is Buffalo Springfield's second album. It's called Buffalo Springfield Again. Mr. Soul's on this one. And this is the third Buffalo Springfield album. It's called Last Time Around. And on this one, Hi Daisy. On this one we have Jim Messina. Jim Messina produced this. This is prior to him being with Kenny Loggins and Messina. After leaving Buffalo Springfield, Jim Messina formed Poco, then went to Loggins and Messina. And this is Neil Young's first solo album. And no name, but it has the original cover. Later on the cover was changed. It was more or less like this, but not exactly like this. This is the original copy. Thank you for watching.